The sun rose gently over the skyline of San Francisco, its golden light brushing across the glass towers and quiet suburban homes where dreams looked brighter than truths. In one such home, a spacious, elegant house nestled near Pleasant Hill, lived Ayaan Malik, the eldest son of the Malik family. At 37, Ayaan was known for his kindness more than his wealth, a man who believed more in people than in papers. He managed the family business, Malik and Commodores Exports, a company his late father had built from scratch. After his father's passing, Ayaan became the pillar of the household, supporting his widowed mother, his younger brother Rayyan, and his wife Zara, a woman whose beauty once matched her warmth. Their home was filled with laughter and chatter, a picture of unity, or so it seemed. But beneath the polished smiles and birthday balloons that morning, a storm was brewing, silent, cunning, and cruel. It was Ayaan's birthday, a day meant for joy, yet destiny had written betrayal in invisible ink. As the house buzzed with guests, laughter, and the aroma of vanilla cake, Ayaan stood at the balcony, gazing at the skyline he worked so hard to conquer. He had spent his youth keeping his family's dreams alive, skipping his own ambitions, ignoring vacations and sacrificing luxuries so Ryan could study in New York and Zara could live comfortably. He often said, "Family is not a duty, it's devotion." But devotion, as he would learn, is rarely returned equally. Downstairs, Rayyan stood with their Uncle Samir, whispering over a folder of papers. Zara, dressed elegantly in a navy blue gown, joined them with eyes full of hesitation, but greed had already softened her resolve. The uncle, sly and persuasive, had convinced them that Ayaan's control over the business left them powerless. "He may act generous," Samir whispered, "but he holds everything. The house, the shares, the legacy. If you want freedom, take it now." And so, one by one, trust turned into temptation. That evening, as Ayaan blew out the candles surrounded by clapping hands, a subtle unease crept into his heart. Zara smiled, but her eyes looked elsewhere. Rayyan hugged him, but the warmth was gone. Still, Ayaan ignored the chill, telling himself it was just fatigue. After dinner, while he stepped into his study to answer emails, shadows gathered in the living room. Uncle Samir laid out new documents, forged with silent precision, transferring the ownership of the company and the house under Rayyan's name. Zara's signature trembled slightly as she pressed the pen, but ambition overruled affection. "It's just business," she whispered to herself, convincing her heart it wasn't betrayal. Days later, Ayaan received a call from the bank. His personal accounts were frozen, his business assets under investigation. Confused, he rushed home, clutching letters and bank statements. But as he entered the living room, he found Zara, Rayyan, and Uncle Samir waiting, faces hard, eyes cold. "Ayaan," Rayyan began, voice trembling with rehearsed righteousness. "The auditors found massive discrepancies. Funds missing. You used company money for personal use." Ayaan froze. "What?" His voice cracked with disbelief. "Rayyan, you know me. I've never taken a dime that wasn't earned." Uncle Samir stepped forward, waving papers like daggers. "Everything points to you. Fake transactions, hidden accounts. We've spoken to the board. You're out." Zara turned her face away as tears welled in his eyes. "Zara," he whispered, "you believe this?" She hesitated, then looked at him with cold detachment. "Ayaan, we found the evidence. Maybe you did things you didn't realize." The world tilted. The home he built, the love he nurtured, the trust he cherished, all collapsing like a house of cards. He stumbled back, staring at the papers thrown before him, forged, manipulated, lies dressed as truth. But no one listened. His voice broke as he whispered, "I built this company for us, for you." Rayyan turned away, muttering, "Then you should have trusted us too." And just like that, years of loyalty were buried under the weight of deceit. The neighbors watched as Ayaan was thrown out that night, The same man who once paid their bills, now walking away with a suitcase and shattered pride. The rain began to fall, soaking his clothes, but he didn't care. He looked back once. Through the window, Zara's silhouette stood motionless, her face hidden behind curtains of guilt. His trembling hand reached into his pocket, pulling out a small folded letter he had written weeks ago. A note of gratitude for his family, planning to give it after his birthday dinner. Instead, he dropped it by the gate, a forgotten truth left behind in the storm. As thunder rolled above, Ayaan walked down the empty street, every step echoing with questions. Why? He whispered into the rain. Was my silence mistaken for weakness? Was my love not enough? The city lights blurred through his tears. In the distance, the house glowed warm and golden, his home. Now someone else's fortress, built on betrayal. He paused under a flickering streetlight, his breath shaky, heartbreaking in silence. The monologue rose within him, soft yet shattering. They took my name, my home, my love, and called me the thief. He walked on, leaving footprints washed away by rain, like his presence, erased from the life he built. Behind him, the letter he dropped fluttered slightly in the wind, sealed with words that could have changed everything. Words that held proof of his innocence. A bank receipt, a confession note from a former employee warning of a scheme. But no one saw it. Not yet. That night, Ayaan found shelter in a small motel on the city's edge. He sat by the window, drenched, staring at the skyline. The same skyline he once ruled from his office. Silence filled the room, heavy and endless. But in that silence, a seed was planted. The seed of patience, of purpose. He could fight. He could expose them. But something in him whispered, not now. He knew the truth always finds its own path, and justice sometimes wears the mask of time. He whispered a prayer, not for revenge but for strength. Lord, give me the power to rise without hate, to watch without speaking, to wait without breaking. Back at the mansion, Ayaan celebrated his victory, unaware the accounts he inherited were tied to debts and hidden clauses Ayaan had safeguarded under his name. Zara wandered the halls, haunted by silence, hearing echoes of Ayaan's laughter in every room. Uncle Samir sipped his whiskey, confident in his manipulation. Yet a faint unease lingered. The letter he never noticed on the porch, glowing faintly under the rain, and so began the price of silence. Not with rage, but with restraint. For some storms don't roar. They rise quietly, in the heart of the man who chooses to endure instead of destroy. Ayaan, sitting by the motel window, watched the first light of dawn break across the city. The pain in his eyes turned to resolve. They built their fortune on my silence, he whispered, and one day, it will speak. Outside, the world moved on, unaware that karma had already begun to write its script. And in the quietest corners of betrayal, destiny sharpened its blade. The winter sun rose weakly over San Francisco, casting a pale golden light across the quiet streets where life hurried past, unaware of the silent battle one man was fighting. Ayaan Malik, once the pride of the Malik family and the backbone of Malik-encumbered exports, now walked the streets with no title, no home, and no voice to defend himself. After the storm of betrayal that tore through his world, many had expected him to retaliate, to file lawsuits, to expose the lies, to scream his innocence from every rooftop. But Ayaan chose silence, not because he was weak, but because he knew truth did not need noise to survive. It only needed time. While his brother Ayaan, his wife Zara, and his cunning uncle Samir celebrated their triumph, Ayaan disappeared quietly, carrying only his dignity, his faith, and a small leather-bound journal he called the Book of Truth. In it, he wrote every detail, dates, signatures, betrayals, and emotions, not as a record for revenge, but as a mirror for justice. He wrote lines like, "Truth delayed is not truth denied. The ashes of trust will one day reveal the flame." Days turned into weeks, and Ayaan settled in a modest neighborhood near Mission District, renting a small room above an old corner cafe. He spent his days wandering the streets, his mind heavy with memories, the laughter of his home, the brother he once carried on his shoulders now standing on his ruin. One evening, as he passed by a narrow alley lined with old shops, he saw a small vacant tea stall, abandoned, dusty, forgotten. The faded signboard read, "Morning Brews." Something in that emptiness called to him. It wasn't just a shop, it was a symbol, a place where he could rebuild not wealth, but peace. He used his last savings, scrubbed the walls himself, repainted the sign with trembling hands, and reopened it under a new name. Silent Brew. It was no grand business, no echo of his old empire, just a humble tea stall tucked between a laundromat and a bookstore. But for Ayaan, it became a temple of patience. Every cup he brewed was a prayer, every sunrise a sermon in resilience. He woke at dawn, prepared tea for early workers, students, and wanderers. People came drawn by the warmth of his smile, the kindness in his eyes, unaware that the man serving them had once signed million-dollar deals. The stall's aroma, cardamom, cinnamon, and hope, spread through the street, becoming a quiet comfort for strangers. And though his hands carried scars of loss, they also carried grace. Each night after closing, Ayaan sat by the window of his small room, lighting a candle beside his book of truth. In its pages, he chronicled every detail of his journey, not for pity, but for clarity. He wrote, "They mistook my silence for surrender, but silence is where storms are born." He listed the forged papers, the manipulated accounts, the moments of betrayal. But in between the lines of evidence, he wrote poetry about forgiveness, about endurance, about the strange peace that comes when you stop chasing justice and start becoming it. Meanwhile, across the city, Ayaan sat in the luxurious office that once belonged to his brother, drowning in arrogance and illusions. The company glimmered from the outside, but inside its foundation trembled. Uncle Samir's greed began to overstep boundaries. Secret deals, risky loans, and manipulated books. Zara, once radiant with confidence, now felt unease creeping into her heart. The home she decorated with pride felt colder. The laughter she once faked now echoed hollow in marble halls. At night she would glance at Ayaan's old study, now locked, and whisper to herself, "He didn't even fight back. Why?" Guilt, though buried, began to stir. Back in Silent Brew, Ayaan's customers often asked about his past. He'd smile softly and say, "I once sold promises, now I sell peace." Word spread of the quiet man whose tea carried warmth beyond flavor, whose eyes seemed to hold oceans of stories. Some said he had been wronged. Others said he had renounced the world. A journalist once asked for his story, but Ayaan politely declined, saying, "The truth will tell itself when it's ready." One rainy morning, while wiping down tables, Ayaan overheard two customers reading the San Francisco Chronicle. The headline caught his attention. "Malik & Co. are under federal scrutiny. Financial irregularities detected." He froze, heart pounding. The article mentioned discrepancies in the accounts, secret offshore transfers and unpaid loans, all under the management of Rayan Malik and Samir Qureshi. Ayaan's eyes softened, not with satisfaction, but with silent understanding. Karma had begun whispering, not with thunder but with truth. That night he opened his journal and wrote, "The tree that grew from lies will fall to the weight of its own fruit. I do not need to shake it. Time will." He closed the book, breathed deeply, and smiled faintly. The universe was unfolding, not by his hand, but by design. Weeks passed and more cracks formed in his betrayer's paradise. Rayan, unable to manage the complex network Ayaan once balanced effortlessly, made reckless investments. Uncle Samir, sensing danger, began shifting blame. Their mansion, once vibrant with pride, now echoed with arguments. Zara, watching it all, started remembering Ayaan's calmness, his integrity, his kindness. The gold they chased now felt like chains around her heart. She began to question whether wealth could ever replace peace. One evening she stumbled upon the letter Ayaan dropped on that stormy night, hidden behind an old cabinet, untouched for months. Her trembling hands opened it, Inside were bank receipts, warnings, and a handwritten note. If you ever doubt me, read this before you judge. Zara, once dressed in jewels and surrounded by servants, now sat alone in her empty living room, the ticking of the clock louder than her heartbeat. The home that once sparkled with parties now gathered dust. Her reflection in the mirror showed not wealth, but regret. Every night she opened drawers filled with designer clothes and shut them again, realizing none could cover the guilt she carried. She often thought of Ayaan, his soft words, his unshakable patience, his quiet eyes the day they turned him away. He never shouted, he never cursed. He just walked away. That silence haunted her more than any scream could have. One stormy afternoon, while cleaning the attic, she found an old wooden box and one she hadn't seen in years. Inside lay a familiar leather-bound journal. Her hands trembled as she opened the cover. The Book of Truth, Ayaan Malik. The pages smelled of time and truth. She turned the first page. Neat handwriting stared back. They took my voice, but not my vision. They took my home, but not my hope. Truth will speak when silence is ready. As she flipped through, her eyes widened. Every betrayal, every lie, every forged signature was recorded. He had known all along. Yet instead of hatred, every page carried prayers. May they find peace before pain. May love return before regret. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "He knew. He knew everything, and still forgave us." Her cries filled the empty house as thunder rolled outside, like heaven mourning her guilt. Meanwhile, across town, federal authorities had begun investigating Malik & Co. for fraud and money laundering. The news broke across every channel. Business tycoon Ayaan Malik under scrutiny. Uncle allegedly involved in offshore scandal. Reporters swarmed the gates. Creditors banged at the doors. Uncle Samir vanished, leaving behind fake addresses and unpaid loans. Ayaan sat in his darkened office, face buried in trembling hands, surrounded by stacks of unpaid bills and letters marked final notice. His empire, built on lies, was turning to ash. He whispered, "Why is this happening to me?" But deep inside he knew the answer. The echo of his brother's silence returned to him like thunder. That night, as rain lashed the windows, Ayaan found himself alone for the first time. No family, no friends, no applause. Desperation pushed him to call Zara, but she couldn't answer. She sat clutching Ayaan's journal, sobbing, replaying every moment she'd turned her back on the man who had only loved her selflessly. She whispered to herself, "We betrayed gold and chose glitter." Outside, lightning struck, illuminating the empty hall, a reflection of their hollow victories. As dawn broke over the city, police sirens echoed through the streets. News cameras flashed as officers escorted Uncle Samir out of a luxury hotel in handcuffs. The anchor's voice filled the airwaves. The alleged mastermind behind the Malik and Kerber scandal has been arrested. Sources confirm millions in fraudulent transfers, all under investigation. The footage went viral, and so did the whispers of karma. People remembered the old rumors of how the company's founder, Ayaan Malik, was betrayed years ago. Some said, "Looks like truth finally returned." When Zara saw the news, she broke down completely. She drove to the old house where Ayaan once lived, now abandoned. Sitting on the porch clutching his journal, she whispered into the wind, "You won, Ayaan. Not in riches, but in truth. We lost everything because we killed love with greed." She placed a flower by the door and wept until sunrise. Ayaan, however, remained unaware of the full extent of their downfall, or perhaps he simply chose not to care. He continued running Silent Brew, greeting every customer with calm warmth, unaware that his quiet strength was now the talk of the city. One morning, a stranger came into the cafe, a reporter holding a newspaper featuring Ayaan's arrest warrant and Samir's confession. He asked gently, "Sir, is it true you were once part of this empire?" Ayaan looked at the paper, smiled softly, and replied, "Yes, I once built a home on love. They rebuilt it on lies. It fell as all lies do." The reporter asked, "Do you feel justice is served?" Ayaan paused, then whispered, Every silence has an echo. Theirs returned as thunder. That night, as waves crashed against the shore, Ayaan sat by the window, candlelight flickering across the pages of his journal. He wrote his next chapter. I prayed not for their punishment but for their awakening. Karma is not cruel. It is the mirror we cannot avoid. He closed the book, placed it beside a photograph of his late parents, and whispered, Maybe now they understand. Across town, Ayaan faced bankruptcy filings, lawsuits, and humiliation. His name, once printed in gold, now appeared in shame. Zara, realizing she had nothing left but memories, started volunteering at shelters, perhaps to find redemption in serving those who never betrayed her. And Uncle Samir, sitting behind prison bars, replayed his choices in regret, knowing the empire he stole had crumbled like sand. The city watched as one man's patience outlasted an entire storm of greed. People began visiting Silent Brew not just for tea, but to hear Ayaan's calm wisdom. He never spoke of revenge, only resilience. His life became a testament. The universe does not forget. It simply waits for the right moment to speak. As the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Ayaan looked out and smiled, not in pride, but in peace. The same silence that once broke him had now built his destiny, and in the distance, thunder rolled once more, not as a threat but as applause from the heavens for a man who chose grace over grudge. Years had passed since the storm of betrayal had torn his life apart, yet Ayaan Malik had never once spoken a word of hatred. He had rebuilt himself quietly, not with revenge, but with purpose. His name now carried weight across the country. The silent builder, the man who turned pain into peace and scars into success. His cafe chain, Silent Brew, had become a national symbol of hope, with quotes of resilience printed on every cup. Patience is not weakness. It is strength without noise. One crisp autumn morning, the city that once cast him out prepared to honor him at a grand charity gala, hosted in downtown San Francisco, where philanthropists and business icons gathered to celebrate his contribution to social welfare. Cameras flashed, applause echoed, and the world saw a man draped not in gold but in grace, dressed in a simple black suit, eyes humble, smile serene. But among the glittering crowd hidden behind pillars of shame stood Ayaan and Zara, the very souls who had once signed away his dreams, now shadows of their former selves. Time had been an unforgiving teacher. Ayaan's arrogance was gone, replaced by hollow eyes and trembling hands. Zara's once proud face now carried the quiet sorrow of a woman haunted by the echoes of her choices. When Ayaan stepped onto the stage, the audience rose to their feet, applauding the man who had turned silence into strength. As he spoke, his voice remained calm. Pain is not punishment, it's preparation. Life breaks us to rebuild us stronger, and forgiveness is the only victory that heals. The crowd fell silent, many with tears in their eyes. Among them, Ayaan clutched Zara's hand and whispered, "We don't deserve to stand here." Yet destiny had brought them, not for applause, but for reckoning. After the event, as the hall emptied and twilight descended, they approached him hesitantly, hearts pounding like drums of guilt. Ayaan fell to his knees, voice shaking. "Ayaan, I destroyed everything you built. I called you a thief, a liar. I took your name, your home, your love, and left you with nothing." Tears streamed down his face as his voice broke. "We gave you pain." Ayaan stood still, tall, calm, silent. Then, with eyes soft yet steady, he spoke the line that hung in the air like truth carved in stone. "And I gave you time. Time never forgets." Zara collapsed beside her husband, sobbing uncontrollably. "We don't ask for your help. Only your forgiveness. We live every day with the weight of what we did. You were the one person who loved us without condition, and we threw you into the dark." Her words cracked like glass under grief. Ayaan knelt beside them, his hands resting gently on their shoulders, not in anger but in understanding. His voice trembled with quiet emotion. "You took my home, but you couldn't take my heart. You broke my trust, but you didn't break my soul. I walked away with nothing, yet found everything peace, truth, and God's justice. There was no rage, no bitterness, only stillness, as if the years of pain had melted into wisdom. Ayaan whispered, "How can you forgive us?" Ayaan smiled faintly. "Because forgiveness frees the one who gives it, not the one who asks. I prayed for your peace, not your punishment, and look, life answered in its own way." The three sat in silence, the city lights flickering through glass windows like stars descending upon their reunion. The moment felt sacred, not revenge but redemption. Later that evening, as they prepared to leave, Ayaan handed Ayaan a set of keys tied with a red ribbon. "Go to this address tomorrow. There's something waiting for you." Confused yet hopeful, Ayaan nodded, holding the keys close like a fragile promise. The next day, under a golden sunrise, Ayaan and Zara drove to the address engraved on the tag, 117 Maplewood Lane. Their hearts stopped. It was their old family house, the very home they had thrown Ayaan out of years ago. The gates were freshly painted, the garden blooming, the windows alive with light. A caretaker greeted them warmly, handing them a letter sealed in gold. Ayaan opened it slowly. Inside, in Ayaan's elegant handwriting, it read, "This house was never built with walls. It was built with love. And though love was betrayed, it was never lost. I bought it back years ago not to own it, but to remind myself that forgiveness is stronger than any wound. Live here again, not as thieves of trust, but as students of grace. I will not return, because my home now lives in peace, not places. But know this, every door you closed on me I've opened again with compassion. Let this house be your lesson and your healing." Zara pressed the letter to her chest, tears falling onto the ink. "He gave us back what we stole," she whispered, voice trembling. Ayaan broke down completely, kneeling on the porch where he once accused his brother of crimes he never committed. "We called him weak, but look at us. He is the strongest among us all." Inside the house, everything was restored. The photographs, the family piano, the kitchen filled with the aroma of new beginnings. But one room remained untouched. Ayaan's old study, preserved exactly as he left it. On the desk lay a single note. "The past cannot be erased, but it can be rewritten with mercy." As they stood in silence, the weight of karma lifted, replaced by the gentle ache of redemption. Outside, the wind carried the sound of distant church bells, as if heaven itself was bearing witness to the quiet victory of a man who chose grace over vengeance. Back in his coastal home, Ayaan stood by the ocean, watching waves crash against the shore. His heart was light, his eyes peaceful. In his hand, a small seashell carved with the word forgive. He whispered softly to the horizon, "The chapter is closed, not in anger, but in love." For the first time, he felt free, not because justice was served, but because love had triumphed. And somewhere in the rhythm of the waves, it seemed as though the universe whispered back, "Well done, silent one." The evening sky was painted in hues of gold and fading blue as the city settled into quiet twilight, a silence that carried both memory and meaning. Ayaan stood before the old house on Maplewood Lane, the same house that had once witnessed his tears, his exile, his unspoken heartbreak. Now, years later, it stood restored and glowing, not with pride, but with peace. In his hands he held a single candle, small, humble, yet radiant with warmth. He knelt by the gate, placed the candle gently upon the stone step, and struck a match. The flame flickered to life, dancing softly in the evening breeze, fragile yet unyielding, like the love that had survived betrayal, like the patience that had conquered pain. For a long moment he simply watched the light, its glow reflecting in his eyes, calm, steady, victorious without vengeance. The street was silent, yet the silence spoke volumes. It whispered of battles fought without swords, wars won without anger, justice served without judgment. Ayaan closed his eyes and the voiceover of his heart began to echo. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It is strength, the kind that bends but never breaks, the kind that listens when the world shouts, the kind that delivers justice in silence. I could have fought them with anger, But I chose time. I could have punished them with power, but I chose peace. Because in the end, the loudest revenge is the one that doesn't scream. It simply lives better, kinder, freer. As the candle's glow widened across the pavement, memories returned like soft waves. The night he was thrown out, the faces twisted in greed, the years of lonely struggle, the mornings of silent prayer. Yet each image now felt distant, almost forgiven, as if the flame was burning away the last fragments of bitterness. Across the street, a few neighbors paused, watching the quiet man with reverence. Though none knew his story, they could feel the serenity that surrounded him. He rose slowly, taking one last look at the home that had once been his prison of pain and was now a monument of mercy. He whispered gently to the wind, "I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." His voice trembled with truth yet carried no resentment, only release. From the doorway, unseen by him, Ayaan and Zara watched through tear-streaked eyes. They stood still, humbled by the grace of the man they had once destroyed. Ayaan whispered, "He gave us everything, and asked for nothing." Zara clutched his arm, whispering back, "We called him weak, but he is the strongest soul we've ever known." Ayaan turned away, walking slowly down the quiet lane, the candle flame flickering behind him, a beacon of forgiveness left to burn through the night. As he walked, the voiceover deepened. Silence may not shout, but when truth returns it roars. Every lie fades, every betrayal breaks, but truth always finds its way home. And when it does, it doesn't need applause, it needs only peace. He reached the corner, paused, and looked back one final time. The house glowing in warm light, the candle still alive against the dark. In that single frame, I lost everything once and found myself in the silence. Forgiveness is my revenge. Silence may look weak, but it carries the strength of mountains. When truth returns, it doesn't whisper. It roars through peace, through time, through the quiet heart that never gave up. Thank you for watching this heart-touching story, The Silent Revenge. If this story moved your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional stories about life, love, betrayal, and forgiveness. Because sometimes, the greatest strength lies not in what we say, but in what we rise above in silence.